It's not your job to, actually act as you're in the place of that mother or you're in the place of that father. Your job is to help them. Your job is to, meet the need. Your job is to provide the resources and services that your organization provides.
My name is Carmen Ray, and I am the founder of Be Well Network. We have a project that's called Be Well for Women. And what we really offer is support, services, resources for women entrepreneurs to be well connected, to be well informed, and to be well inspired. And we do that a few ways. We have online events, we have retreats, conferences, and one of the things that we have that we're so proud of is the Be Well magazine. So during the month of October, we're going to be highlighting relationships, winning women with relationships. And today we're going to be highlighting one of our spotlight winning women. And so we've all come together today to make sure that we can give the adequate support and highlight the work of our guest today. Her name is Dr. Latrice Rollins. She's out of that Georgia area. You're going to hear so much about the significance and the relationships of fathers and how they impact their children, our communities, and the world overall. So thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to share so much about how you can not only connect with us for the purpose of this interview, but at the end, we're going to share how you can stay connected and get involved with the work of Dr. Rollins as well as Be Well. So thank you so much for joining us, and let's get started. I'm going to turn it over first to our editor-in-chief, Crystal, and then Crystal going to introduce herself, and then I'm going to share with you all a little bit about how I got connected with Dr. Rollins so you can hear about the power of her work and the release of her book that I had an opportunity to be one of the contributors to. So stay tuned. And now I'm going to turn it over to Crystal Thompson.
My name is Crystal Thompson, and I am the editor-in-chief of Be Well magazine. Always so excited to be here with my team, with Carmen Ray, our fearless founder of the Be Well Network and the entire Be Well community. Also with Michael DeMond, and we will let him introduce himself, but he is our phenomenal marketing genius. And of course, we're excited to be here with Dr. Latrice Rollins because we know that there's so much just reading about Dr. Rollins and learning about her. I'm so excited to just be in this intimate space with you today. And with that, Michael, would you like to introduce yourself as well and just come to the front of the room and share who you are and why you're such a master of your craft as well?
Sure, I can do that. Hello, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of Be Well in the Spotlight. I'm looking forward to our talk today with Dr. Rollins. I have in the marketing field get the opportunity to work with so many professionals from so many industries. And a lot of my, I would say, like most time occupying work is in the public health field. So I've done some work before for some clients in fatherhood area. I've done a number of different other health initiatives, but what I love about it is that I always get to learn something new. So I can't wait to hear Dr. Rollins' story about, what got her to this point of pursuing this specific area. And then also, I think it's just good for the community overall to know that there are some specific needs for a specific part of the African-American community that don't get talked about often. And usually you just hear the negative side of it, being a father and a girl dad, as they say. I know, like the stereotypes are, and I approach fatherhood in every way to make sure that I didn't fall into those traps. So I'm just looking forward to this conversation, learning something new, being able to have something good come out of our conversation for everyone who's listening and watching the show from Dr. Rollins.
All righty, so let's get started. All right, Dr. Latrice Rollins, I met her some years ago working in the area of domestic violence. I worked at an agency called the Alma Center, in Wisconsin. I still have no idea how the dots connected and how we met. All of that kind of feels like a blur, but I do remember enough to know that she was working on a research paper. And I remember just sharing with her some of the work I was doing in fatherhood and working in the area of intimate partner violence, around domestic violence. So first of all, I want to applaud you, Dr. Rollins, for having a passion about something and sticking with it, something that's so impactful and profound for our communities and our families. So you just come on up to the line and tell us a little bit about you. How did we meet, and a little bit about your work that you've been doing over the last several years?
Thank you so much, first of all, for having me and inviting me to be a part of the Spotlight. I am honored and humbled to be a part of the Be Well Network, and so proud of the work that you're doing, Carmen, in this space. And so, yeah, that is interesting in terms of how did we meet. I did share with some other ladies. I know that I stalked a lot of women that were in the fatherhood field because I was trying to get my dissertation completed around women, especially African American women's experiences working in fatherhood programs. And I'm sure some way or another, someone said, you need to talk with Carmen Ray. And so I was doing interviews in Atlanta, where I am. And I was also doing interviews in Milwaukee, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Baltimore and Washington, D.C. So I went all around speaking with women about their experiences working in fatherhood programs because I heard from a leader in the fatherhood field that that is what we needed more information about. There are a lot of women working in fatherhood, but we don't really hear a lot about their stories because typically the face of the fatherhood organizations are men. And a lot of what we even hear in research and things that pass on different programs, how you're supposed to act, you're supposed to hire a male to encourage and to invite more men to join fatherhood programs. And so I was interested in, well, if that's the case, how am I working in fatherhood? How are other women working in fatherhood? So I wanted to hear these women's stories. And so I was reaching out via email to a number of different women, and Carmen was one that bit. so that was 2008-ish, around in there. And so, God has a funny way of bringing things back, things that you're passionate about. I had, graduated with my doctorate in social work in 2010 after successfully, doing that dissertation research, and went to work for the Office of Inspector General with HHS. And I was a program analyst and pretty much was doing evaluation of a number of different health and human service programs, but not specifically in that fatherhood field. I really wanted to work with HHS so that I could work with the administration for children and families, because that is where a lot of the responsible, quote unquote, responsible fatherhood, healthy marriage, that's kind of where all of the funding for those programs resides. And so I wanted to work in that space because what I understood as a frontline social worker, that a lot of things that we're not able to do is because of some policy or because of something that was decided above us. So the things that we see on the front line, we're not so much able to do a whole lot about because of different policies and different things that were in place. So me being who I am, getting tired of kind of hearing the same stories and not being able to give the appropriate solutions in my mind, I'm like, let me go to where changes can be made. And so that's how I winded up getting into the doctoral program to get those tools as it relates to research and program evaluation, and being able to have, that kind of entree into the room, and to have a seat at the table to say, this is what our people are experiencing, this is what families are experiencing, and these are the different, things that programs need to do to really help them to be beneficial. So I did that, working with the program, the HHS Office of Inspector General, doing evaluations. Did that for about 4 years, but it took me more on the side of public health versus really going into the fatherhood side that I was really passionate about. I continued to kind of publish and do presentations around my dissertation research and things, but it was like over here, right? It wasn't something that I could focus on mainly because my main position was around Medicare and different, CDC, a lot of different public health type of programs. And so I saw the opportunity to come to Morehouse School of Medicine, where I am now, kind of coming full circle around back to my HBCU roots, and have an opportunity to work with the community, still doing program evaluation, still doing research, but being able to do it with community, not at that kind of higher level with the federal government where you're mainly just working with policymakers, you're working with federal staff. So this was totally exciting. I've had the opportunity to be supported by the leadership here in pursuing my research agenda around fatherhood, and have been able to now pull back all of those folks, like Carmen, like all of the other women that I interviewed back in 2008 or so, and say, hey, this is still a pressing issue. We still got a job to do. And so that's kind of what I've been working on for now. Probably the past, centrally kind of lasered in focus, probably the past 2 years.
Thank you so much for sharing that part of the interview, so we can really clearly understand how we were connected, how you're connected to this work, and the different layers that it took for you to get to the place that it sounds like you really found a good home to really impact the work. And we always want to highlight in the Be Well community, like the inspiration. What were the things that really inspired you in that area? So I'm going to turn it over to Crystal so she can ask those line of questions.
Dr. Rollins, I'll be honest, I am so enamored with your focus on fatherhood. And so and please don't take this as diminishing the magnitude of your work, because wow, it's amazing. And I'm so incredibly inspired and excited about the work that you're doing. I would love to know a little bit about your personal relationship with your father, if you could share, would be willing to share some of that, and just, some of the men in your life and how those connections, how those relationships have impacted your desire to do this work.
Yes, everyone asks it, so please don't feel like that's the question that comes up all the time. As a woman, so passionate about fathers, they're like, what does that have to do? Why do you care so much? Why are you so into doing this work? And it is absolutely because of my dad, and so he did not reside in the home with me at any time. But I kept seeing research and all these things saying that, single parent households, fathers aren't engaged, and all of these things. And it's like, just because we have single parent households, that doesn't mean that the dad isn't engaged. On the census, those statistics, they ask you who resides in the home. They don't ask you who's engaged. So we can't say that, because 70% of African American households are single, female-headed households, that there's no father anywhere in the picture. And so my pastor says, if something makes you really angry, that's probably your passion and purpose. And that was making me really angry every time I would hear research and statistic about dads are not engaged. So I really want to counter that narrative. And also, like I said, seeing on the front line just the impact that fathers have on their children, whether it is their social lives, whether it is their academic, whether it is physical. There's so much data and actually just anecdotal, just my experience having uncles, having grandfathers, having cousins, having all of these males who were just so supportive and so integral to who I am. And how I kind of have grown as an adult, and even just with my relationship with my dad, how he influenced my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my kids, so again, it really, my passion stems from a personal place of having these relationships with various male relatives as well as male friends and community members, and really wanting to counter the narrative and the practice and attitudes that I saw in practice when I was working on the front line and having to deal with other, quite frankly, other female practitioners who just kind of did a lot of things that were negative towards father based off of a mental model that they adopted. And it's like, you cannot treat people like this because one size doesn't fit all. You have to look at each case on its own and not put your own personal feeling into it in terms of like a negative experience that you've had or anything like that. And so, like I said, it was making me really mad, really angry in the practice. I'm like, yeah, something has to be done about this. This is not how we're taught. As social workers, we're always taught to look at individual situations and see how we can bring in the strengths of that individual and of their community and things and find out how we can help. We don't sit here and say, based off of a negative experience that we're having personally, well, this is how all men are, and this is how all fathers are. And, the consequences of that I saw were just detrimental. There were no resources, no services, no programs being offered to these fathers that were in need, as much, if not more need than the mothers.
So then I want to just piggybacking off of that a little bit, because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, but it would require someone to stretch significantly if they have not had that type of relationship with their father to try to consider the other side, or if you will, like how could we expect more people to find a passion for researching the healthier side of that type of a relationship, whether it's a fatherless household or whatever? How can we encourage that to continue? I don't know if you have the answer to that question, but I just wonder if you have thoughts about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the work. And that's why it has been such an uphill battle, to be honest, because we're not going against, everybody has a family. So everybody has an idea or some kind of relationship, an idea. So it's not like this is something that we're teaching folks off like with a blank slate, right? So they're not coming in totally objective, right? But what we do is take people back. Specifically, if you are in a health and human service profession, there are ethics, there are professional ethics. And so just like, and this is a situation I'll explain to some of the practitioners and things that we're doing training with. So just like if there is a medication that's out that we find leads to more positive health outcomes, doctors make sure that that's the medication that they give to their patients. They don't, well, I had a bad experience with that medication, and so therefore I'm not. No, they go based on the science. They go based on the research because they're in a professional setting. When you are dealing with families that are not your own, right? They're not yours. You have taken on a job to help to increase and improve child and family well-being. You can't bring your negative experiences or any bias, as we see, that's a popular word here now, implicit bias. You can't bring that into the professional setting. Does it happen? Absolutely. But you have to learn to mitigate it. You have to learn to address it. Like, okay, I realize I'm looking at this through a personal lens versus a professional. But so I take people back to their ethics. I take people back to their job, right? It's not your job to, actually act as you're in the place of that mother or you're in the place of that father. Your job is to help them. Your job is to, meet the need. Your job is to provide the resources and services that your organization provides.
Absolutely. I love how you address that. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yes, that is very, very powerful. And when I think about those biases that we have, they can really, really impact our work. I had such a positive, I was just surrounded by some really good men growing up. Like it was well into my adult life that I did not totally normalize that this is just how uncles show up. This is just how fathers show up. And by no means am I saying that they were perfect men, but I just think that the way they were able to love unconditionally and support, I just believe that fathers really help identify our strengths. They really identify our strengths as young girls and our potential, and not doing it in any other way, but their ability to believe in us. So how do we get that work to penetrate in our social service settings when people don't necessarily have that positive frame of reference. Like I had a hard time, Dr. Rollins, working in domestic violence, and we were doing like fatherhood work, and I had a hard time labeling these men as the reason of who they were just because of a situation that they found themselves in. What I found over and over and over again, that these men who had these acts of violence, it really, really had to do with them. Before they became perpetrators, they were victims. And so much had happened at the hands of not only their fathers, but their mothers too. But as adults, we just absolutely labeled them as abusers, batterers. And so, it's really hard for our kids to see the greatness in our fathers when, because of a situation, and I'm by no means making excuses, but we are all greater than the sum of an incident or a period in time in our life. So how do we really penetrate that work if we're a person that could have had those traumatic experiences, that we don't pass that on and just do our work with biases just because it was our experience growing up?
Absolutely. And, that's why it was so, so important, and why I stalked you so much, Carmen, because I needed your chapter in that book, because that is one of the main areas that people say, well, what about the abusive dad? Well, what about, and it's like, oh, Lord, yes, that happens. It absolutely happens. But don't mothers also get children taken away from them for abuse and neglect? Doesn't that also happen? And don't we find ways to, reunify the family and do all these things to make sure that she gets parenting education classes, anger management, whatever, to make sure. And so, just the same way we have to do with the fathers as well. And so it was so important to make sure that we got that chapter out there. So to your point, I think it was not about just getting the information out, but the stories. And I think that's usually, for some people, some people react to data, to research and things like that, but a lot of people react to stories, to real people and real circumstances, and how things have happened. And so the chapter that you co-authored with me is around a young man who, like you said, was very, most social services staff would be like, I don't even want to deal with it, and turned out to be a shining star in your program, right? And so making sure that we share those stories to give people um, opportunities to reflect on their own practice, and opportunities to reflect on possibly missed opportunities. And that's kind of I think the core of the trainings and things that we do around father engagement is not only sharing the data, because some people need that, but making sure that we share those stories. That these are real people. These are fathers who have a lot of different challenges, a lot of history, a lot of challenges that the moms have as well, but little support, little resources, little services to, and then the kind of public scrutiny and kind of stereotypes, and Michael shared, that kind of uh, weigh them down, and prevent them from getting really the help they need to be the optimal parent that we need them to be. And so sharing that, and kind of being able to see people go, I never thought about that. That, yeah, I can do better in this area. Now, I didn't ask about that. I didn't. No, the system doesn't require me to enter this information. So just having them reflect on their practice, and actually, again, I always take their personal feelings out of it, but think about the purpose of what you're there to do, and think about that person. Um, Empathy, can really be a great solution to a lot of things. Just really putting yourself in that other person's shoes, and understanding that they need help, and you're in a place to do it. Understanding that you're in a place to help change the culture of an organization. A lot of people feel like this is an issue that is just insurmountable. There's nothing I can do. But you as an individual can make a difference in someone's life. just by offering your services and your resource. So
I'm glad you said that because I was thinking here about something you said earlier, and then you kind of touched on it again. And that's about the places that people go to get the support and the resources that they need to be better parents. And oftentimes, when Crystal asks her question, you have people who come to the job with their own personal history. Who's responsible, or who's the check? Like who's kind of monitoring the environment to make sure that the people aren't bringing their personal experiences and letting that hindrance the service providing. But then also kind of like the internal advocates for the dad. Like if they don't have your level of research and background, who's making sure that organizations are held to a higher standard to make sure that they're treating both parents or trying to service both parents as best they can?
yes, that's an excellent question, Michael. And much more work needs to be done in that space because we know when we apply for a job, nobody really does like a personality or any kind of biopsychosocial assessment to find out, if you have any past trauma. They just want to know if you have the skills to do the job. And once you get into the job, you're doing whatever it is in terms of policies and procedures that that place has. If there are no policies and procedures that are supportive and inclusive, then they pretty much aren't included in terms of fathers and things like that. And so that's something that we're trying to change, making sure that not only are organizations father friendly in terms of their environment and in terms of making sure that they have brochures and posters and pictures that include dads, but what are your policies? What is your organization's mission that actually, if you say you're about children, if you say you're about families, you're not just talking about mom and you're not just talking about the child, you're talking about the whole family, whatever that looks like, whether that's granddaddy and granny, whether it is cousins, uncles. How are you making sure that folks are inclusive? And that needs to be in policy, not just in just believing that people will do the right thing, because we know that doesn't happen, right? It just hasn't happened over, I don't know how many years we have had a welfare system, social welfare system. It just has not happened without there being some policy in place that says you must do this. And so it's unfortunate. We do have different, a lot of focus on equity, diversity, inclusion training here recently with, everything that has happened in our country in the past year or so. A lot of focus on equity, diversity, inclusion, but it has been more racially focused than it has been gender. And so we really have to, again, be very intentional when we're working with organizations to say, hey, your staff needs training, and also you need to have this in policy that, basically making sure that your data systems, that your mission, that all of these things are inclusive of fathers, that you have referral systems and linkage systems set up to not just have resources for moms, but also making sure that you are connected with the fatherhood programs in your community and different things like that to make sure you have somewhere to direct these fathers who come and seek service. So it's there isn't a set process when people are coming into a job to check and see if they have biases and trauma and past issues, but hopefully the leadership of the organization can offer that kind of training, as well as make sure that they have policies in place that support more inclusion.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, you have definitely did an awesome job today, Dr. Latrice Rollins, on helping us to really connect to the work. You've really laid it out on how we can be inspired, and you have created this book so that everyone can be engaged, whether you're a professional, if you're a community person, you're leading up fatherhood programs in your church or whatever, you need to have this book. So please share with us how people can get access to the book and be able to connect with you to learn more about your work and what it is that you do, and how can the Be Well community better support you so that we can make sure we get this very important message out.
I have a website, latricerollins.com. You can go on the website and purchase the book. There is a discount code and, limited time. So make sure you go to the website and you can order the book with the discount code. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Just type in my name, Latrice Rollins, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also connect with me on Twitter and see a lot of the different things that we're doing here in Atlanta to what we call Mobilize Fatherhood. We are mobilizing because we have the research, we've talked to the dads, we have all this information, and so now it's time to do something with it. So we are mobilizing to promote and support father involvement, and would love for you to connect with me to join the work, to join the movement. So definitely get the book. It was originally designed for students for the most part, for those who are in social work, who are in any kind of health and human service, public health, any kind of field like that, where you will have to engage with families. I wanted there to be specific, unique chapters of different fathers that you may encounter that you may have never thought you would. So, the domestic violence chapter is there, fathers in homelessness, fathers in Alzheimer's kind of caregiving positions. So a lot of different things, foster fathers, a lot of different services and things that you may not have thought fathers needed. This book not only gives you information about a lot of fathers that need your service, but gives you some stories about some fathers and how they were served. So definitely connect with me in that way. And anytime you need me to come speak, anytime you need your staff to be trained about how to engage fathers, especially women, let me know. I'm here. I love it. Love to do it.
Well, excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. And just want to check back with the team and see if anybody got any closing comments before we officially end the conversation.
I would just also like to say once again, thank you, Dr. Rollins, for spending this time with us. As editor of the magazine, of Be Well magazine, I'm excited to have this conversation with you, because even though our magazine has a predominant female audience, I think it's so important for me to bring relatable content to our audience. And this conversation, the women that read our magazine, you are a winning woman. So you as a contributor, but also the women who are on the other side, they have relationships with males and with, fathers and brothers and uncles, and they need to know this information also. And I'm sure that they have connecting insights to everything that you've talked about. So I'm super excited. I know that you will likely sell many books due to this interview, and I'm going to definitely suggest your information, your website, to the community at large. So thank you once again.
All right, be well. We did it. All righty.